Hey, everybody out there in podcast land, it is time for your weekly sports fix. It is time for Sports Frenzy 2.0, taping here Wednesday night, May the 3rd, 2023, hitting early Thursday morning, May the 4th. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Glad to have you aboard, flying solo this week. Believe it or not, the Conquistador is attending a Yo-Yo Ma concert. God bless the Conquistador for doing what he does. This is the man that told me last week he doesn't want to see Pearl Jam, but he's going to see Yo-Yo Ma. So you can make of that what you will. I will simply snicker and move on to the sports news of the past week. Of course, the NFL dominated the news last week. The NFL draft and a couple other very interesting quarterback notes. Let's start off with those. The trade, of course, we talked about for Aaron Rodgers was finalized. He is now officially with the New York Jets. The financial numbers, though, are very interesting. And again, Dave has said this in the past, and I have to back him up on this. What is the point of the salary cap if you can find all these ways to circumnavigate actually staying under the cap? So supposedly Aaron Rodgers' cap numbers. For 2023, he is only going to be costing the New York Jets $1.165 million. But next year, in 2024, $107.55 million. But again, there is some kind of an option, some kind of a clause that they can trigger where they can spread that $107 million out, I believe, over 5 years. So again, what is the point of the salary cap if teams can circumnavigate it whenever they want, however they want? At some point, yes, they're going to have to pay the piper. We're seeing it right now with the Buccaneers. We're seeing it right now with the Rams. Roger Goodell doesn't care. Roger Goodell just comes out for the draft every year, tells everybody to boo him, hugs all the first-round picks, and makes more money from the owners because he's making more money for them. Of course, even bigger than the Aaron Rodgers financial news is the Lamar Jackson financial news. I think this is a terrible, terrible, awful signing. If you guys have been listening over the past couple months, you know Dave probably agrees with me. The Baltimore Ravens caved, and they gave Lamar Jackson a 5-year, $260 million deal. On average, he is now the highest paid player in the NFL. $185 million guaranteed. He did not get the fully guaranteed contract that he wanted. And I don't think anybody, at least for a while, is not getting that. Just because the Browns were stupid doesn't mean everybody else, all the other 31 teams, have to follow in line with the idiocy of the Cleveland Browns. But beyond that, Lamar Jackson isn't that good. Yes, I know he had an MVP season. So did Sean Alexander. Lamar Jackson has been unreliable due to health. And this year, I'm sorry, due to the fact that he was a little pissant and decided to sit out and cost his team a chance to advance in the playoffs. And I've said it, countless times here over the last few months, if Michael Vick is coming out and saying, yes, the convicted dog fighter, Michael Vick, is coming out and saying he had the same injury and played through it. Shame on Lamar Jackson for playing this. Now, he won. I'm not saying he didn't win. He won. The Baltimore Ravens caved. But shame, shame, shame on them, and shame on Lamar Jackson for costing his team potentially a year with all the drama, all the infighting, all the back and forth. Oh, my knee, oh, my knee, oh, my knee, pulling a Caddyshack Rodney Dangerfield move just so he could complain and whine and bitch and piss and moan and finally get the money that he doesn't deserve. Congratulations, Baltimore. Welcome to mediocre hell for the next 5 years because you're not winning a Super Bowl in the stacked AFC. And again, that's the thing I can't understand. The Jets fans going crazy. We're going at least to the NFC Championship. Ravens fans, we're going far into the playoffs. No, you're not. No, you're not. You still have the Bengals with Joe Burrow. You still have Josh Allen and the Bills. You have Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, of course, you have the reigning, defending Super Bowl champs, the Kansas City Chiefs. And we're not even talking yet about Justin Herbert in LA with the Chargers, Jimmy Garoppolo with the Raiders, Russell Wilson with the Broncos, Deshaun Watson, the aforementioned Browns. If Tua Tagovailoa can stay upright, the Dolphins. The AFC is brutal. And I find it ridiculous that Baltimore and New York think they are top contenders with what they've done. Sorry, kids, not going to happen. Schedule supposedly going to be released May the 11th. I've never understood why that's a big deal, but I guess for some of you out there it is. But of course, the big thing we have to talk about is the NFL draft. Now, I was hoping to have exclusive recorded footage of myself, the Conquistador, and a couple of guest stars from our panel of 8, the Elder Statesman and Mrs. C, as we did our annual draft tradition. We usually watch the first round together. This year, we watched the second and third rounds together. But things didn't work out as we planned. We couldn't record a segment. We were just having fun. So, sorry, the loss is on you. But I will recap what happened in the NFL draft. Not going to go into a ton of detail. That would be boring. That would be ridiculous. I will leave that to Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper Jr., Chris Mortensen. Brief summary, though. Top picks, of course. Number 1, Carolina Panthers take Bryce Young, quarterback from Alabama. We talked last week about the IQ test, the cognitive tests, and how Bryce Young was a 98%. And I'm sorry, that's the kind of guy I want. I don't care if people say he's short. He's proven he's a winner. He played for a major, big-time college, always competing for championships, and he's smart. That's what I want. Now, that did not deter the Houston Texans at number 2 from taking C.J. Stroud, quarterback, Ohio State. Because, of course, again, last week, C.J. Stroud, we highlighted the fact that he scored abysmally low on this cognitive test. It's not the Wonderlic like it used to be, but I believe it was 18% he scored on this. And I'm sorry, in the interview after he got drafted, he really didn't sound all that smart to me. So have fun, Houston. And they did have fun, because what they did was they turned around and they shipped off the farm in terms of draft picks, draft capital, to Arizona to move back up into the number 3 slot. So not only did they have the number 2 pick, but now the big move of the night, they move up again to get the number 3 pick, taking the top defensive player, Will Anderson Jr. out of Alabama. You want to talk about pushing all your chips into the middle of the table? That is exactly what Houston did. We will see if it works out. The good news for them is that the AFC South is probably, if not the weakest, along with the NFC South, one of the weakest divisions, in football, outside of Jacksonville, of course. The Jaguars right now, all of a sudden, they should be winning that division by week 10. That should be locked up in the bag, playoff berth clinched for the Jaguars by week 10. We've got the Titans, who we'll get to in a second, and we'll get to the Colts right now. At number 4, the Colts. Probably kind of happy that the trade happened, that the Texans moved up to take a defensive player at number 3, blocking a lot of other quarterback needy teams, because that let them draft the 3rd quarterback of the night, Anthony Richardson from Florida. Physical specimen, all the physical tools, skills that you would want. He's going to need time to develop, and I feel so bad for Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew needs somewhere to land so he can have a legitimate shot at being a starting NFL quarterback. And he is hosed again. He is screwed again. How long will he be the starter, if he even starts the 2023 season as a starter? Again, just feel bad for him. I still think that kid has starter talent in the NFL. But Anthony Richardson is now the future for the Indianapolis Colts. Now, of course, we were supposed to have 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10, 12 picks or so. That did not materialize. So let's discuss the other picks that happened in that area, and then we'll get to that 4th quarterback. My beloved Chicago Bears. We'll see. We will see how this draft plays out for the Bears. I have my questions. I have my concerns. They dropped down from 9 to 10. As you remember, they dropped from 1 to 9, getting a bounty of picks back from the Carolina Panthers so they could take Bryce Young. But the Bears dropped back another pick, another slot, to let the Philadelphia Eagles take Georgia defensive tackle Jalen Carter. Of course, a very controversial pick, given his history with the fatal car accident. And then, of course, him showing up out of shape for pro day combine workouts. The sad thing is with the Bears, I mean, by all accounts, from what I heard, they didn't want to take Jalen Carter, and they took a 4th-round pick. Let me just say this. That's a pathetic return. When you're talking about moving up in the top 10 and all you get is a 4th-round pick, pathetic. Ryan Poles, pathetic. And again, I heard that it's because the Bears were willing to take anything they could get because they didn't want to draft Jalen Carter because their organization cannot support players who have needs, players who need counseling, who need to be treated a little bit differently. Yes, we're talking about players who have a history of problems, criminal past, whatever it might be. And again, pathetic on the part of the Bears. Pathetic on the part of the Bears that they are cowardly enough to pass on a guy. And I'm not saying I wanted Jalen Carter, but that excuse, if that is true, that they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the support system in the Chicago Bears organization to help out a kid like Jalen Carter, who obviously has talent. And they're too scared to take on that burden. And so they'll take under the market value of what they should get to drop back in the top 10, 1 pick, 1 slot. It's pathetic. So the Bears end up getting Darnell Wright, offensive tackle from Tennessee. Here's my next problem with this pick. Does it serve a need? Yes. But you're drafting the 10th, arguably, best player in the college ranks for this season. Projections are he is a right tackle or right guard. Again, I will use the word pathetic. That is too high of a draft pick for a right tackle or a right guard. Especially when you had my guy, the one I wanted, cornerback Christian Gonzalez of Oregon, sitting out there waiting for you. And not only you, but the Detroit Lions, we'll get to them in a second, who have always had problems with their secondary. They let this kid slide all the way to, yes, Bill Belichick at number 17. Bill Belichick snags what I think is one of the steals of the first round. Christian Gonzalez, cornerback from Oregon, goes to the Patriots. I wanted him with the Bears. I thought he would have been gone by 9. They could have had him at 10 for a right tackle. I have problems with that. Now, otherwise, the Bears draft, very boring, but they were trying to fill holes. They were trying to fill needs. I get that. And I don't know every player. You don't know every player. Did the Bears get some good picks? I hope. We will only find out in 2024, 2025, and beyond. But I am not convinced this was a great draft. I think it was a good draft for the Bears. Justin Fields is going to have to develop. He's got more weapons now. DJ Moore, obviously. Help on the offensive line to protect him. Of course, I would have sort of liked to see Bijan Robinson, but he went to the Falcons at 8. And they already had Tyler Algier, very good young running back, so an odd pick for them. But obviously, the last couple of years where all the great prognosticators were calling for the death of the early round, first round running back selections got proven wrong this year, because now we get to the Detroit Lions at number 12. The Lions take Alabama's Jahmyr Gibbs, a complete and total shocker. We all figured somebody would reach a little bit on Bijan Robinson because he's supposedly an otherworldly talent at running back. But nobody had Jahmyr Gibbs going in the first round, at least not in the first half of the first round. Very curious draft for the Lions. Passing on my man, Christian Gonzalez, again, as I mentioned. Could have had help in the secondary, which they always seem to need. And then later on, they pass on supposedly a first-round talent at tight end with Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. Good replacement for T.J. Hawkinson, who they traded away to the Vikings. They instead go with another tight end. So they seem to be in love with Iowa players. Let's put it that way. A very curious draft for the Detroit Lions. Now, of course, we talked about the fact that the fourth quarterback, who was supposedly going to be drafted in the top 10, fell all the way out of the first round into day 2, and that would be Will Levis of Kentucky. Pick number 33 in the second round. He went to where he should go, which is the Tennessee Titans. I was shocked the Titans passed him up in the first round, but obviously that worked out extremely well as they got him early in the second round. They had to move up to get him, I believe. But Malik Willis, I mean, that was not a great pick last year from Liberty. When they tried to put him in this year for the aging, always hurt Ryan Tannehill, he showed no sense of being able to run an NFL offense. So obviously the Titans now hope that Will Levis will be the answer, will be the replacement for Ryan Tannehill. And isn't it funny that Stetson Bennett, Georgia's national championship quarterback, goes to the LA Rams in the fourth round, where he will be mentored by a former Georgia Bulldogs quarterback in Matthew Stafford. Not a bad pick. Not a bad pick at all. There are a lot of quarterbacks taken out there. I'm not going to go through all of them. We've covered the highlights. We talked about the Eagles drafting Jalen Carter. They actually picked up 2 more players from the Georgia Bulldogs. A lot of people joking that it's now the Philadelphia Bulldogs. But hey, with the talent the Georgia team has had under Kirby Smart over the last 5-6 years, why not? Same thing as drafting a ton of Alabama players. This year, Tennessee as well. Oh, and by the way, talking about quarterbacks, that was the one smart pick that I think the Lions made, was grabbing Hendon Hooker, the 5th quarterback drafted. So now there's a little bit of a spark, a little bit of a push to see if Jared Goff can really and truly prove himself. Maybe not an upper level, but a second-tier quarterback in the NFL, now that he's got pressure on him, now that he's got competition. We always talk about our teams in college, Notre Dame and Miami. We talked about Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer, the stud tight end. Not my words. The draft pundit said this. Slipped to the 35th overall pick to the Las Vegas Raiders, taking the place, obviously, of the departed Darren Waller. Number 40 in the second round, defensive end Isaiah Foskey goes to the Saints. Then, of course, with my Miami Hurricanes, couldn't have been happier. Second round pick, number 56 overall, cornerback Tyreek Stevens from the U goes to the Chicago Bears. So hopefully he's 80% of what I think Christian Gonzalez is going to be. Green Bay Packers, of course, traded away Aaron Rodgers last week. They have shown a limited amount of faith this week in Jordan Love as they give him a 1-year extension, which will cover next year. $22.5 million, over half of that guaranteed. So Jordan Love now has a 2-year window, basically, to prove himself to the NFL and the Green Bay Packers faithful. You got to love this. Somehow, the Nielsen ratings, they adjusted here at the end of April, beginning of May, adjusted in mid-February, the numbers for Super Bowl 57. Now it is the most watched Super Bowl ever, up to 115.1 million. So yippee skippy if you care. I don't. It's just like politics. You manipulate the numbers, you cheat, you lie, you steal to make yourselves look better. Okay, real quick, we touched on college football, talking about the Notre Dame draft picks and the Miami Hurricane draft picks. One last thing on Notre Dame. I got to give props to the conquistador. He called it. Tyler Buckner, leaving the Fighting Irish to go to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Of course, former offensive coordinator for Notre Dame, Tommy Rees, is now the OC for Nick Saban down there. So this is not a shock. But again, kudos to Dave for calling this last week. And then finally, everybody's freaking out. The schedules have been released for the expanded college football playoff starting in the 24-25 season. This scheduling will carry it through to the next season as well, 25-26. I'm not going to get into the weeds on this, but the interesting thing is, at least for these first 2 years, and we have 1 year left of the 4-team playoff. Keep that in mind, kids. 23-24 is still a 4-team playoff. But starting in 24-25, wild card weekend in the NFL, guess what we're getting on Thursday and Friday night before wild card weekend? We are getting the college football playoff semifinals. And then, of course, you've got the Monday night wild card game. So you're going to have 5 straight nights, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, of prime top level, top shelf football. They're talking about tweaking things, of course, down the road. They don't want to compete directly with the NFL. Who does? 115 million people watched the last Super Bowl now. So there you go. All right, we're done with football. Baseball, NASCAR coming up soon. Hang out through a promo. I'll be right back. Hi, my name is Kyrie Irving, NBA superstar, of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean the Boston Celtics. Brooklyn Nets. Damn. Dallas Mavericks. And while I may leave a trail of wreckage wherever I go, I still like to spend my off time listening to Sports Frenzy on Spotify, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Cast, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Stitcher, Amazon, and Audible. And if you don't like it, it's not my fault. It's your fault. Hell, nothing's ever my fault. Kyrie is never, ever wrong, people. Welcome back to Sports Frenzy 2.0, flying solo this week. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. We're taping here on May the 3rd, 2023. This will hit Thursday morning, May the 4th, as always. So I have to take over for the Conquistadors' normal duties here in segment 2. I have to tell you where to find Sports Frenzy 2.0. Of course, you have found us somewhere, but you have options. And as Dave always says, you can find us on Spotify, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, and Stitcher. I can't do it as well as he does. Also Amazon and Audible. Don't forget to check out the Facebook page. Baseball picks. Weekly baseball picks. Weekly NASCAR picks. When it gets to the fall, weekly football picks. Links to each and every episode, including the weekend edition, which drops every Saturday morning. You don't want to miss the weekend edition. Movies, music, TV and streaming, books, anything involving pop culture, Dave and I will dissect it for you. All right, we've got playoffs going on in the NBA and the NHL, so let us discuss that. What am I supposed to say about the NBA? The NBA, so predictable. So predictable. And you wonder why people think that it's fixed. Let's recap what happened in the first round. The big surprises. Let's just stick to that. The 8th seed, the Miami Heat, beat the number 1 seed, the Milwaukee Bucks. I believe that was only the 6th time that has happened in NBA history where an 8 beats a 1. But over in the West, the Lakers, the 7th seed, knock off the number 2 seed, Memphis Grizzlies. Shocking. Once again, everything falling LeBron James' way. The Knicks destroy the Cavaliers. They move on to the second round. And then Steph Curry puts up a game for the ages. Arguably the greatest Game 7 individual performance of all time. 50 points in the Warriors' Game 7 win over the Sacramento Kings. So you've got a 7 over a 2 in the West, the Lakers over Grizzlies, and a 6 over a 3 as the Golden State Warriors, the defending champions, beat the Sacramento Kings. And of course, we talked about ratings in the last segment and how they are adjusted, manipulated for the Super Bowl. Well, the ratings for that Game 7 between the Kings and the Warriors the ratings were through the roof. Unbelievable. If you say so. If you say so. I know I didn't watch a single damn minute, so there you go. So along with all the other series that wrapped up, this is what we're left with, the Elite 8 of the NBA. You have the Heat and the Knicks. You have the Sixers and the Celtics, the Suns and the Nuggets, and the Lakers and the Warriors. This is where, again, I say, how can you not think or feel like the NBA is manipulated in terms of outcomes? You know they wanted this. You know they wanted the Lakers and the Warriors. They didn't want the Kings advancing. They didn't want the Grizzlies advancing because the ratings would have been awful. This is why I'm not a fan of the NBA, and I never will be. It's manipulated. It's borderline crooked. Ask Tim Donaghy. So, as we tape Wednesday night, May the 3rd, the Heat and the Knicks tied up 1 game apiece. Jimmy Butler hurt. We don't know when he's coming back after a severe ankle roll in game 1, which the Heat won on the road, taking home court advantage away from the Knicks. And they almost won last night in New York again without Jimmy Butler. But the Knicks put together a really nice run in the fourth quarter, so they still do not have home court advantage, but at least they're not down 2-0. Your new MVP, thanking Kendrick Perkins for his racist rants from a couple months back, is Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers. Oh, and guess who got 0 votes? That would be LeBron James. Ha ha! I don't watch enough NBA, as you can tell, to really be able to say Embiid deserved it. He didn't deserve it. But all I know is that asshole, Kendrick Perkins, that racist asshole who can barely speak, can barely put 2 sentences together, starting all that talk about how, oh, we can't give 3 MVPs in a row to the white guy in Denver. You don't think that had some kind of an impact? You don't think that had some kind of an influence? And I'm not saying Joel Embiid is not a great player and not deserving of an MVP. But when you've got the media, once again, like they always want to do, inserting themselves into these types of discussions and trying to influence votes and influence people, they're not doing their job. Their job is to report. But speaking of the 76ers, Joel Embiid didn't play in the first game against the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference semifinals. But guess what? It didn't matter because James Harden decided for once in his life to show up and play well in a playoff game. So just like the Miami Heat stole game 1 on the road from the Knicks, the 76ers steal game 1 on the road in Boston against the Celtics. And for all the talent they have, something's wrong right now with this Celtics team. They are just not playing well. They're not meshing. They're not cohesive. They're better than this. With the Bucks now out, they should be rolling into the NBA Finals. So we'll see. We will see what happens in the East and the West. Denver, right now, taking care of business, won the first 2 games at home. The Nuggets over the Suns, 2-0. We'll see if Kevin Durant and company can come back. If the Suns cannot, and they let the Nuggets advance, this is going to be a very disappointing couple of years for the Suns, especially after acquiring Kevin Durant from the Brooklyn Nets. Then, of course, finally, we talked about the matchup from hell. The LA Lakers and the Golden State Warriors. And, of course, somehow, Street Clothes, still the greatest name ever given to Anthony Davis by Charles Barkley, shows up big time, and the Lakers become the third of these four teams that we're talking about stealing game one on the road in the conference semifinals. They beat the Golden State Warriors and are up 1-0 on the defending champions. I hate this name, the Dubs. The Dubs. Hate it. So stupid. All right, in hockey, Dave's probably sitting at his Yo-Yo Ma concert right now. Glad he doesn't have to talk anymore about the Blackhawks. But after putting up the greatest regular season of all time, and it wasn't even close, by 3 games, the Boston Bruins had more wins than any other team in NHL history. The Boston Bruins are out in the first round. The Florida Panthers knock out the Boston Bruins. There's no guarantee. Ask the Seattle Mariners under Lou Piniella with Ken Griffey Jr., putting up an unbelievable regular season, not being able to advance past the first round in the baseball playoffs. Now you've got the Boston Bruins with their historic regular season out in the first round against the Florida Panthers. Again, though, TV ratings through the roof. Highest rated, I believe, cable hockey Game 7 ever. Possibly the highest rated cable hockey broadcast ever. Not going that far. So not only are the Boston Bruins eliminated, but the defending champion, the Colorado Avalanche, are out in the first round as well. So now, I heard the odds this morning on the NHL playoffs. It's kind of shifting back and forth based on what we've seen here in the second round. I believe initially it was the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, because they lost their first game, and we'll get to the Maple Leafs a little bit more in the Red Forman Dumb Asses of the week. The Maple Leafs initially came out as the odds-on favorites to win the Stanley Cup after all of the fallout from the first round. But now I do believe the Edmonton Oilers are now, as I tape, the favorites to win the Stanley Cup. But again, a lot of the teams, the Rangers, the New York Rangers, out. The Bruins, out. The Avalanche, out. I mean, the Kraken are still in. Second year as an expansion team. Made it into the second round of the playoffs. And then we've got one last little note on the NHL. Interesting. We talked a little bit in the past, I believe on the weekend edition, about Ryan Reynolds and the whole soccer team show, Welcome to Wrexham, that he had on FX, and how that turned out to be a success beyond belief as his team actually got bumped up overseas. If the teams do well enough in soccer, they can move up levels. And so Wrexham did very well and ended up moving up a level. Well, now Ryan Reynolds wants to buy a hockey team. He's got a group of investors along with him who want to shell out over $1 billion for the Ottawa Senators. And that's cool. I want new ownership. I want, if the team's not working out, if the current owners, we all know about Dan Snyder and how finally that long national nightmare ended with the Washington Commanders. There are other teams out there. We'll talk about the Tampa Bay Rays and the Pittsburgh Pirates in baseball here in just a minute, and how they're going through unprecedented success for both franchises. But in the end, is that really good for the sport? But again, I'm all for switching ownership if things get stagnant, stale. They aren't taking care of the facilities. They're not taking care of the fans. And most of all, they are not trying their best to compete for championships. Because when you get to the top level in any of the four major sports, you need to be fighting for titles. That is your sole and only corporate focus. All right, we're going to talk about a couple other miscellaneous sports things, and then we'll move on to baseball. This weekend is the Kentucky Derby. I really don't give one rat's ass about the Kentucky Derby. Our panel member, Doug, every year, we meet 4 times a year, quarterly meetings here for Sports Frenzy 2.0 to pass out awards, to discuss the future of this wonderful podcast franchise. And Doug always wants us to start doing a Kentucky Derby contest. And the other 7 members of the panel say, oh, hell no. But it's always nice to mention the Derby in conjunction with him, give him a little love here on the podcast, on the show. Now, the odd thing is, story just broke today that 4 horses died here in the lead up to the race at Churchill Downs this weekend. Investigations are underway. Now, I'm not normally a animal rights guy. Not a big fan of PETA. But that doesn't mean I don't love animals. That doesn't mean I don't want them respected and treated properly and humanely. So by all accounts, there is a thorough investigation underway, and there should be, to find out why these 4 horses died this week at Churchill Downs. Now, of course, Dave and I debate the PGA Golf Tour versus the LIV Tour. Interesting news, interesting pictures coming out this week of one Bryson DeChambeau. Remember, this is the guy that was the long drive champion of the world. He came out looking like a linebacker from the NFL, smashing the ball farther than anybody could have ever hoped or dreamed off the tee. Well, kids, you better look at him now. He has dropped all that weight. He is now, I'm not saying he's unhealthy, but he is now relatively skinny compared to the Hulk that he was a year or 2 ago. Get out there on social media, on YouTube, Google it. You'll see what I'm talking about. But Bryson DeChambeau looks nothing physically like what he used to a couple years ago. Now we move on to baseball. We talked about the Pirates. We talked about the Rays. We alluded to them. Talking about ownership. when we were mentioning the Ottawa Senators and Ryan Reynolds and his group. Well, right now it's very, very hard to argue against what the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Tampa Bay Rays are accomplishing right now with small budgets in Major League Baseball. Now, of course, you guys know how the Rays are playing after their unbelievable start. They are still doing well, still a decent lead in the AL East. The Toronto Blue Jays playing very well also. And of course, the Baltimore Orioles, another example of a smaller budget team playing unbelievably well. So, for all the years recently that the Conquistador and I have bitched and pissed and moaned and complained about, let's get these teams out of here, let's get new ownership in, let's get them new stadiums or move them to some other city who cares more. Outside of Oakland right now, I don't know if that argument holds water. The Pirates playing unbelievable baseball in first place after the first month of the season in the NL Central. The Rays, of course, in first place in the AL East. The Marlins are playing well. We'll get to that in a second. Much to my chagrin, the Marlins are playing well. Of course, Dave is not here, but he wanted me to pass along a tribute to the late, great Gordon Lightfoot. Now, this could have been done on the weekend edition, but because it involves the Chicago White Sox, I felt like it would be a little bit more appropriate here in the sports edition. Dave basically wanted me to pass along to the podcast audience that the White Sox are a bigger wreck than the Edmund Fitzgerald. There you go. White Sox are 9-21, taping here on Wednesday night, May the 3rd. Fourth place in the AL Central, 8 games behind the Minnesota Twins. Next week, I'm sure he will catch up on all the vitriol and the cursing and the swearing and the bitching and the pissing and the moaning and the complaining. I've been there. I've done it with my Cubs. And this is where we go pull in the Marlins that I just talked about. The Cubs right now, 15-14. Third place in the NL Central. 4.5 behind the Pittsburgh Pirates. And again, the unfortunate part of this is the Cubs were looking very good until recently. They were swept over this past weekend by the Marlins, the Miami Marlins. And now the Cubs are struggling against the Washington Nationals. And this is not the sign of a good team. When you can't play well against teams you should be beating. Right now, over their last 5 games against the Marlins and the Nationals, the Cubs are 1-4. Tonight's game still pending, but still, this is why I don't like David Ross. I don't think he's a good manager. He's got the best lineup he's had since he has taken over as the skipper of the Cubs. And again, he finds ways to lose. The offense is solid this year. The pitching is solid this year. Yes, they've had a couple injuries, but nothing debilitating. but somehow they find ways to lose. I watched the third game of the series where they got swept by the Marlins on Peacock Sunday afternoon, and they mentioned how abysmal the Cubs are with runners in scoring position. And that, again, that's on the manager. You have got to get these players to knock in the runs. You get a guy on third with less than 2 outs, get him in. I've told you guys, I am not a fan of Uncle Rossi. We need to get a better manager in there with this team we've got now, because you've locked up Nico Horner. You've got Dansby Swanson. I don't know what the future holds for Cody Bellinger, but he's playing well. He's on a 1-year deal. Same for Eric Hosmer. Same for a lot of the guys on this team. A lot of these guys are mercenaries. That's what I call guys who are on 1-year deals. They're mercenaries. They're looking for a career year so they can get somebody to pay them for 2 or 3 or 4 years, which I think Cody Bellinger's going to get. I think Cody Bellinger, if it's not the Cubs, somebody's going to pay him 3 or 4 years. He's young enough, $60, $70, $80 million minimum. But while Dave complains about the White Sox, I'm still not extremely happy with the Cubs. They're doing fine. They're doing okay, but you can't get swept by the Miami Marlins like this. Other teams with issues. The evil empire, the New York Yankees. How much do I love this? How much do I love seeing that the Yankees are in last place at the beginning of May in the AL East? Everybody, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, the Orioles, the Rays, better than the Yankees. And now, joining Giancarlo Stanton on the IL is Aaron Judge with a hip issue. Then more bad news. Their big free agent acquisition, Carlos Rodon, still not looking like he's coming back anytime soon from a back issue. The doom and gloom prognosticators on New York sports radio think this is a precursor to him having to undergo back surgery and being done and not even playing his first year with the Yankees. Ha ha! Love it. Love it. Cowboys in football, Yankees in baseball, Lakers in basketball. Any bad things that happen to those teams, I am down with it. I am ecstatic. I'm cheering, and I'm happy. The most arrogant fans, the most entitled fans of all time. Yankees, Lakers, Cowboys. Kiss my ass. How about that? And then finally, getting back earlier than projected from Tommy John surgery, Bryce Harper back in the lineup for the Philadelphia Phillies, so maybe that will get them moving up in the standings. They're hovering around 500 right now, which not a bad place to be without your star player through the first month of the season. The only problem they've got is that if they want to win the AL East, or the NL East, if they want to win the NL East, they're going to have some work to do because the Braves are starting to check out on them, the Marlins, and, of course, the New York Mets. The Mets are dealing with a whole bunch of weather issues. They've had to play doubleheaders here today against the Tigers. They had to play a doubleheader Monday against the Braves because of weather. So the return of Max Scherzer, the return of Justin Verlander, that all got screwed up. So the Braves right now looking like a championship contender, as of course Dave and I predicted they should be the front runner to win the World Series this year. And that is going to do it for segment 2. Going to wrap it up here, but we've got one more segment left. Of course, we've got to go through NASCAR, recap the Dover race, the Worth 400, look ahead to the Advent Health 400 at Kansas City this coming Sunday. We've got all of our panels picks in. Shocking, rarely happens, but we do have all 8 picks in. Also, we're going to have 1 Clint Eastwood badass for you and 3 or 4 Red Forman Dumb Asses and a couple moments of silence in the final segment. So hang out with me just a little bit longer. I'll be right back. Feeling mildly fatigued? Need a day off even if you just took one a few days ago? Make $30 million a year but just don't want to work for it? You need to join the NBA Load Management Club right now. When they're not napping or texting, guest lecturers Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving will describe foolproof ways to earn tens of thousands of dollars by not doing anything. Sports Frenzy 2.0, available on Spotify, Google, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, is currently negotiating with LeBron James to bring his popular How to Make the Hall of Fame Without Really Trying webinar live and in person to the Load Management Club. Thanks again to Sports Frenzy 2.0 and all you apathetic fans out there for making us a success. All right, everybody, third and final segment here on May the 3rd, 2023, Sports Frenzy 2.0. The Maestro flying solo this week as the Conquistador is at Yo-Yo Ma. Every time I hear Yo-Yo Ma, all I can think of is that classic Seinfeld episode with Kramer after he's gotten concussed, he's got brain damage. Yo-Yo Ma. Time to talk NASCAR. The Worth 400 last weekend, rain delayed from Sunday to Monday. Kyle Busch got the pole due to rain. I'm still not a fan of this whole metric. Basically, if you win the race before, you get the pole for the following race. After that, it kind of shuffles around a little bit outside of the finishing positions from the previous race, but still, I don't think it's necessarily fair that you should be that rewarded for winning a race that if the next week qualifying gets washed out, you get the pole automatically for the next race. That's just me. But the great thing about this race at Dover was the fact that my man, my pick, Martin Truex Jr. won. And of course, the Truex brothers sweep the weekend as Martin's younger brother Ryan won the Xfinity race. Very cool. Very, very cool. And of course, what makes it even more cool, the Grand Marshal, Kevin Smith. If you guys listen to the weekend edition, you know how much Dave and I love Kevin Smith. We love the Clerks movies. We love Mallrats. Maybe not Chasing Amy so much, but Jay and Silent Bob forever. So very cool to see Kevin Smith getting into NASCAR. Of course, Ross Chastain, Dave's pick, finished second, but he got into more trouble. as he wrecked Brennan Poole, which took out Kyle Larson. It seems like every week Ross Chastain is on the hook for some kind of trouble, whether he actually did cause it or whether it was just perceived to be him as the perpetrator. In this case, unfortunately, I did see he drove way too aggressively when he hit Brennan Poole in the back, causing him to spin out and then collecting Kyle Larson. That was not a smart move on Ross Chastain's part. And he did apologize after the race. But he is really got a target on his back because it just seems like week after week, going all the way back to last year, no matter how well he runs, no matter how well the results are, somebody on that track is upset with him for the way he runs his car. We will see if it eventually catches up with him. The Legacy Motor Club, of course, formerly Petty Motorsports, is now shifting to Toyota in 2024. Now, of course, Jimmy Johnson is the lead man. He is in charge of Legacy Motor Club. So, Jimmy Johnson has decided, along with his other managing partners, to move Legacy Motor Club to Toyota for next season in the Cup Series. And then finally, in the rumor mill, Josh Berry, of course, the super sub right now for Hendrick Motorsports. He filled in for Chase Elliott after Chase Elliott broke his leg in a snowboarding incident. Dumbass! Dumbass! And now he's filling in for Alex Bowman because Alex Bowman broke his back in a sprint car race. I won't say he's a dumbass because there's no way you're going to keep these guys from racing other circuits, other series. It's just not going to happen. The snowboarding thing on Chase Elliott's part, we've said this, dumbass move. Dumbass move. But anyway, Josh Berry has performed admirably, subbing for Chase Elliott and now Alex Bowman. So now he has joined Kevin Harvick's management group. And everybody is now speculating that this means that Josh Berry will take over for Kevin Harvick. Of course, we know Kevin Harvick is retiring after the 2023 Cup season. Will Josh Berry now be the de facto replacement for Happy Harvick? We shall see. All right, race 12 of the 2023 NASCAR Cup season this Sunday, May the 7th, 2023. The Advent Health 400 from Kansas Speedway. Myself, the Conquistador, and Nick, the Juggler, all take Christopher Bell for this Sunday's race outside of Kansas City. Bill, the Big Blue W, having a very rough year. And Bill, God bless him, every year it seems like he goes through and it takes him until the last week 25, week 26 of the regular season to get himself into the playoffs. He flirts with disaster every year, and he is really, really doing a number on himself this year. He had Kyle Larson at Dover, and we just described just documented what happened to Kyle Larson. He's going with Kyle Larson again for Kansas City. Mississippi, Jen was having a great run so far through the first 10 races of the year. Race 11 at Dover hits. She took Kyle Larson as well. Took a little bit of a hit there, but she's still doing fine. She's still in the playoff chase. She is taking William Byron. Doug, the governor, on that cut line. I believe he's only 1 point out of making the playoffs for us here at Sports Frenzy. You got to be in the top 10 with all of your driver points, the top 10 in NASCAR's driver points by the end of the 26th race to make our playoffs. So Doug's 1 point out right now. He is going with Tyler Reddick. The elder statesman's tearing it up this year. Sam. Last year he quit on all of us. Well documented how we did not handle that well. Now he's just far and away the best of all of us this year, except I believe I have one more win than him. But Sam is going with my guy from last week. Sam is going with Martin Truex Jr. to go back-to-back. And then finally, Aaron, the Big Easy, is taking Kyle Busch, last week's pole sitter. So there you go, kids. That is your NASCAR recap for the week. We have a Clint Eastwood badass of the week for you. A guy named Mike Sweeney, living in his car, ended up qualifying for a Corn Ferry event. Now, the Corn Ferry Tour is kind of like the minor leagues of the PGA Tour. But yeah, this guy is a diehard golfer, been living in his car, trying, and he finally qualified for a Corn Ferry event. How many of you, if you were living in a car, would just give up? You'd be holding signs on the street corner, begging, trying to get money to fill up the gas tank, maybe get yourself some food. And I am not by any way, shape, or means disparaging the homeless in this country. But this Mike Sweeney actually had a talent, a quality that he could exploit. And so now he should be okay making a little bit of pocket change by finally qualifying for a Corn Ferry Tour event. So congratulations to Mike Sweeney. I think that makes him a Clint Eastwood badass of the week. All right, moving on to moments of silence. Mike Shannon, St. Louis Cardinals radio personality, passed away recently. Believe he was a former player for the Cardinals as well. And then Tori Bowie, 2016 gold medal winner at the Rio Olympics in the 4x100 relay. Way too young, passed away way too young here within the last day or two. Thoughts and prayers go out to the families and friends of both Mike Shannon and Tori Bowie. Now, of course, it's time, as we always do here on Sports Frenzy, to pivot from being solemn, from being respectful, in the moments of silence to calling out the absolute stupid jackass morons of the week. It is time for the Red Forman Dumb Asses of the week. You've got to start off first and foremost with news that just broke today. Now, this is a story. This is like a follow-up dumbass. Because we've already called him out for being a dumbass for this situation, but because he has now been charged and arrested for it, I guess we would call him a double dumbass. That would be the brother of Patrick Mahomes, Super Bowl quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. His brother Jackson Mahomes did get charged and arrested for sexual battery. Now, Dave and I discussed this on Sports Frenzy a few months ago, where he and his entourage were bullying a restaurant owner and a member of her staff. And he was being extremely inappropriate with her. Now, this was back in February, right around the Super Bowl. Now, finally, he has been charged and arrested in that incident. So, Jackson Mahomes, you were a dumbass back in February, and you are a dumbass now, because now you're going to have to go to court. God help me, I hope, and go to jail. Stop acting like your brother and his talent and his success is somehow entitled to you. Do something responsible with your life. Be mature. Create your own legacy. Or is this what you want on your tombstone? Jackson Mahomes, brother of Patrick Mahomes. Create something for yourself. Stop being an entitled jackass. Stop being an entitled dumbass. PK Subban, recently retired player in the NHL. Now, I will admit here, this is borderline for me in terms of being a dumbass. Now, PK Subban was never the most liked player, but of course he was one of the few African-American players in the NHL, so you have to be very careful and tread lightly when you're talking about him. But of course he got hired on, I believe, with ESPN as a commentator with a 3-year contract. Not going so well by all accounts, but after the Toronto Maple Leafs lost Game 1 in the second round of their playoffs, I believe against the Florida Panthers, we talked about them knocking off the Boston Bruins. I mentioned the Maple Leafs were initially the favorites going into the second round and then got knocked down a peg because of the loss in Game 1. Again, I believe to Florida. PK Subban, of course, asked what he thinks the Maple Leafs can do to rebound after that Game 1 loss. He says the Maple Leafs need to pack a, quote, Lizzo-sized lunch, unquote, for Game 2. Now, in this PC world we live in, you can't fat shame. You can't say anything bad about anybody being out of shape or overweight. It's fat shaming. See, now, this is where I'm going to qualify this dumbass selection with PK Subban. He's a dumbass because he should have known better than to say something like this. Again, given the day and age we live in. Now, in and of itself, is it offensive to me? No. Lizzo's fat. Lizzo to me is fat and disgusting, and she needs to get in shape. I need to get in shape, and probably a lot of you out there need to get in shape. If somebody called me a out of shape fat ass, I'd say, yeah, you're probably right. And I need to get in better shape. I need to eat better. I need to exercise. I wouldn't take it personally. You know why? Because it's true. Now, I am in no way, shape, or form as fat as Lizzo is. And I also don't have the singing chops she does. But at the same time, PK Subban is a dumbass for not realizing that he can't say this. You just can't say this in this day and age. So for that, he's a dumbass. For the actual comment, doesn't bother me so much because, again, I'm tired of looking at Target ads with big fat folds of women wearing lingerie. Just disgusting to me. I'm sorry. Models should be attractive. That's why they're called models. New Era. Of course, New Era makes all the baseball caps for the Major League Baseball ranks. New Era bitched and pissed and moaned and complained because the Atlanta Braves had something called a big hat home run celebration, where if somebody hit a home run here early on in the 2023 season, they would put on this big oversized goofy hat to celebrate the home run. And New Era, of course, didn't like it because the big, oversized, goofy hat the Braves were using wasn't a New Era hat. So Major League Baseball told the Braves, stop it. You can't do this anymore. New Era, get a clue. Stop being overly corporately sensitive. For the love of God. New Era, you're a bunch of dumbasses. And then finally, again, I'm going to go back to the PK Subban marginal borderline dumbass that I just gave you guys, that I just called out a few minutes ago. And bear with me here. This is why we're an explicit show, is because sometimes the language gets a little bit nasty and very, very un-PC. And this is one of those moments. So if you got kids in the car and you're listening to this, you might not want to listen to the last couple minutes of the show. But for our final dumbass of the week, ESPN reporter Marly Rivera. ESPN cuts ties with Miss Rivera. She was supposedly, the scuttlebutt is, have an interview with Aaron Judge, star player, of course, for the New York Yankees. We talked about him earlier, now on the injured list. But Marly Rivera was supposed to have an interview with Aaron Judge, and I guess the scuttlebutt is fellow reporter colleague Yvonne Gaiti kind of jumped the line and got in there and got to Aaron Judge first and got the interview, or got in a question or two before Marly Rivera could. And so ESPN fired Marly Rivera because she ended up calling Yvonne Gaiti a cunt. Yes, the C word. And again, I warned you it was coming. You can't use that word. You can't use that word. Nobody. I don't care who you are, gay, straight, white, black, male, female. That is one of the big no-nos. I kind of wish the N-word was like that too, but you guys know the problems I have with that. But yeah, Marley Rivera off ESPN after using a very, very crude pejorative for her colleague, Yvonne Gaiti. So I hate to end Sports Frenzy this week on that kind of a note, but that's all I've got for you, kids. Dave will be back next week. A couple things we'll pick up on that I didn't have time to get to, especially with the NFL draft. Didn't get to talk about our secondary teams, the draft picks for the Miami Dolphins and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and what they did right and what they did wrong. So we'll discuss that next week. We will have a recap of the Advent Health 400, the NASCAR Cup Kansas City race. We'll, of course, give you our weekly breakdown of how the Cubs and the White Sox are doing. It's all good each and every week. We will be here for you on this podcast, Sports Frenzy 2.0. And, of course, do not forget to check out the weekend edition coming up Saturday morning, May the 6th. I will have reviews of the movie Champions with Woody Harrelson. I will discuss what's going on with Titans and Beavis and Butthead. I will give you music reviews, including the new album from a personal favorite band of mine, The Hold Steady. Also talk about the new song from John Mellencamp. So be sure to check out the weekend edition. All the same type of fun we have here on the regular sports edition, but it's pop culture instead of sports. I am the Maestro Kevin Crane. You guys take care. I hope you have a great rest of your work week. Check us out on Saturday morning. If you want the sports edition, after this, one more week to wait for Dave and I to be back next Thursday morning. Take care, everybody.